Hello, the topic of this lecture is the endocrine system, and I am working off the note page just to help keep us organized because the textbook doesn't do a very good job of this section, but it does a good job for free. Not my favorite textbook though, but because it's free, that's always good. Okay, so when we're looking at the endocrine system, what I want you to look at is some key vocabulary words. A gland is the organ that gives off or secretes the messenger, and the chemical messenger is given the name hormone. Now, a chemical messenger or a hormone usually affects a target, and in most situations, the target is the tissue that has the specific receptor that interacts with the hormones. And quite often, there's topics on the endocrine system. An endocrine system is a system where chemicals are made and they are put into the bloodstream. And because they're in the bloodstream, they can circulate around the whole body. And an example of that is insulin or thyroid hormone. The other example of something that sounds like endocrine is exocrine. In an exocrine system, the chemicals are still made, but they are released into ducts, and the ducts go outside the body. Now realize that the digestive system isn't seen as part of the body. So an example of this is sweat coming to your skin, oil coming to your skin, or the digestive enzymes going into your digestive gland. So that's the introduction so far. Now next, there is a little video here on how hormones work, a good old TED Ed system. I'm gonna, might as well stop now and you have a look at it. I'm just gonna pause for a bit and then you can look at this and then rejoin me after you're done. Good. Go watch the how do your hormones work. Good. Now I hope you did actually stop and look at how the hormones work. It's a good introduction, especially for those of you who haven't studied much of the endocrine system before, because it's a Bio 30 topic. Okay, when we look at the endocrine system, it is a communication system like the nervous system. The endocrine system helps the body communicate like the nervous system, but to compare it to the nervous system, the hormones of the endocrine system act slowly and they travel in the blood. So the action is distant and it is longer lasting than the signals sent by the nervous system. So the nervous system is fast, short acting, and what they call local because it just stays in that nerve with one nerve talking to another. So it really stays in the area of the synapse. Good. Let's have a quick introduction to the glands and their hormones, and we will go in more detail in these in a bit. So this is just an introduction, and I will mention the hormone at this time and briefly fill it in, and if not, you can fill in the table as you read through the rest of the chapter. If we start at the top of the head, there is something called the pineal gland, and it is found in the back of the base of the brain stem. So here's the spinal cord coming up, and then the brain stem is here, and this is the pineal gland. The pineal gland sets the day-night cycle, and that's what is messed up when we go to daylight or off daylight saving times. So the pineal gland releases a chemical called melatonin in the dark, and melatonin will make your body sleepy and help you set that day-night schedule. Then there is another gland in the brain called the hypothalamus, which is below the thalamus. And the hypothalamus releases and regulates the pituitary gland. And a lot comes from the pituitary gland. So much that we call the pituitary gland the master gland. The master gland is the pituitary, and there is the anterior pituitary, which is the front half, which is more glandular, and then there is the posterior pituitary, which is more nervous tissue. Good. We'll go into that later. At the base of the neck, there is something called the thyroid gland, and behind it are the parathyroid glands. Then right above the heart is something called the thymus gland. The thymus gland is where those T cells from the immune system get their education. Then the kidneys are endocrine glands that give off a hormone. Have we talked about blood yet? We talk about when we talk about blood. And the main thing here is the adrenal glands, which are the glands on top of the kidneys. There's two layers, the outer and inner layer of the adrenal glands, and they give off a bunch of different stuff too. Then we will look at the pancreas. The pancreas is where insulin is given off, and also another hormone that has the opposite effect of insulin called glucagon. Insulin will take sugar and put it into the body and store it, and glucagon will break down the stored sugar and release it into the bloodstream when the glucose is gone. Then we have the uterus, the ovaries, and the testes. So that's the introduction. On the introduction, we've started this table. You can complete it more as we go through all the different hormones. There are two different classifications of hormones, and there was a spelling mistake in here, so a mix-up, not a spelling mistake. So there are two classifications of hormones. Steroid hormones is group 1, and non-steroid hormones, or protein or amino acid hormones. And they're based on different chemical structures, and this is why I took so much time at the beginning to talk about chemical structures. Here is the mistake. Steroid hormones are hydrophobic. It says philic in the original notes. Hydrophobic. Steroid hormones are scared of water, but they like lipids. Then non-steroid or protein hormones are hydrophilic. So they like water, and because of that, liking water means you dislike fat, which means they're going to both interact differently with the cell membrane, remembering that the cell membrane is a phospholipid. So if you're a lipid, you like lipids, but you don't like water. Okay, there are two classifications. One is called the steroid hormones, and I'm just going to show a bit of this video so that you can understand what is the interaction of the steroid hormones. So here we go. Okay, so this is steroid hormones. Here we have the blood plasma over here. This blue blob is the cell membrane, and inside is the nucleus.
Steroid hormones are not water-soluble. They travel in the blood attached to protein carriers. When steroid hormones arrive at their target cells, they dissociate from their protein carriers and pass through the plasma membrane of the cell. Some steroid hormones bind to specific receptor proteins in the cytoplasm and then move as a hormone receptor complex into the nucleus.
Okay, did you understand the chemistry there? So when the steroid hormone, which does not like water, is in the blood, which is mainly water, it has to travel on a special carrier. But when it goes into the cell membrane, it can go right through the cell membrane, no problem. So it goes right through the cell membrane. Right through the cell membrane, no problem, because steroids are a type of lipid, and so is a phospholipid. It goes right through, then it will bind to its own little carrier protein, it may, and then it goes right into the nucleus. So this is a way that the steroid will cause inflammation. Type number 2 are non-steroid or water-soluble hormones. So let's have a look at it here. This one doesn't have any sound, and this isn't the one that's linked in your notes. But here comes the protein hormone, and the protein hormone does not interact with the membrane because the hormone is hydrophilic and the membrane is hydrophobic. So what happens instead is the membrane will bind to a receptor, causing a reaction inside. So if you notice that, let me stop it for a second. The hormone bound to the receptor, and the receptor causes this messenger system. It's kind of like passing a baton in a relay race. This will send the message to this, which sends the message, which activates the green blob. Then the green blob will use ATP and make another chemical, which then activates the second messenger, which will then cause something else to happen. So this is called a second messenger system. The first messenger is the hormone landing on the receptor, and then the second messenger is whatever the other thing goes on. So here, these will be done, and then this causes this, which causes these subunits to move apart, and then you have the second reaction. Okay, so these are non-steroid molecules, and it is water soluble, so it can't go through. Because it can't go through, you end up with what's called the second messenger. Good, so I summarized that video in a document here, or a diagram is actually a more correct word. So here's the diagram here. Here is your non-steroidal hormone. It interacts, it binds with a receptor, which activates an enzyme or a pathway, causing the second messenger, which then causes the action. Good, I will leave you to fill in this box on how non-steroid hormones work and how they will influence the gene expression. And that is the end of this video. I will start negative feedback and the rest of this in a second video. Good.